cute, huh? Yeah, hello together to the Gateway Ambassador webinar. Oh, hi Dan.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. I did it without muting.
So yeah. So for today's topic would be about fairness testing of data and also how we could transfer it to science gateways and maybe cyber infrastructures, interoperability. And therefore, I would like to introduce a little bit the Fixity project. It's a preservation quality tool, and it's about really increasing information about data. So the goal was that, yeah, researchers are mostly, of course, in the computation environment they have chosen for their research, whether it's a science gateway like HubZero or Galaxy or Gavi, TAPIS, the Hawaiian Waikiki Gateway. And but they have also the mandate to really preserve data and add metadata. And so with Fixity we started, I'm one of the co-PIs on the computational side, and the other co-PIs are from the library side. And they said, Sandra, the typical situation is they come at the end of a project to us like, oh, NSF would like us to have, our data preserved the next 10 years. Can you do that and in a meaningful, curated way? And then it's, of course, a little bit late if you also want to curate data that has, for example, from some simulation they run 2 years ago, or, so really curating data at the end of a project is 10 times the work, and maybe also data is already lost. And there's also the stories like if a PhD student, for example, already got finished with the work, that's also the, let's say the advisor is like, oh, where's all the data he created? And yeah, so sharing of data is a big topic, preservation of data, but also software and using the computational environment your researchers are normally using. And Fixity steps into this gap. So the idea is really to say these are RESTful services, and it has an API. And if somebody says, oh, I want to transfer my data from the HubZero gateway to Zenodo, for example, that they can do it directly in HubZero using the Fixity services. And Fixity can check, for example, for Fixity. Is the data you send via the network still the same data with the same hash when it arrives in the next system? Is it, we can add keywords. We can add more metadata information, what happened with the data. And our newest feature is really testing fairness. And I will start to share my screen, just to give you an impression. And then I would like to do some brain trust brainstorming, but you would like to see, so we are at a stage in the project where we have these fairness testing, and we would like to see, or I would like to see what is a good way maybe to using it and offering it also in a broad way to the Science Gateway community. So this is a demo user interface. So the idea was always that Fixity services are in the background, so that users never have to leave their environment they've chosen, but that the Fixity services can be added by a Science Gateway provider, by a preservation system provider in the background, and users don't have to leave their user interface. And this is just to show funding bodies, developers, what kind of services are there. And these little logos show you, so we have integrated already with OSF, the Open Science Framework, CurateND is a preservation system, with GitHub, GitLab, with Figshare, with Zenodo. And Hotel is one of the systems. It's also a Science Gateway based on on OSF, and Hub 0 is a partner. They will also add, or we will add that soon to this user interface. So the services are in work at the moment. And I will show you an example. So what you see here, therefore I said this is not normally for the end user. We will add a different authentication, but Fixity doesn't have its own authentication. So what we said is we are working with API tokens, and the user, if a user has resources in OSF and wants to send them to Zenodo, the user needs to have in both systems created a user account. And we are just mapping this user account in the background. And all the systems we are connecting to have API tokens. So there's, for example, this one I created. Let me do this again. Now I should be able, let me move this away. Yeah, you cannot see that my Zoom is in the way here. So let me create a token. And for this demo, OSF demo, and I want to do everything. And this is really the authentication we are using from the different partner systems. So I'm going back to Fixity, insert my token here, and I'm connecting to Open Science Framework, and I can see all my different projects I have there. And I could create a new one, but I'm selecting this. And so you can see I can do a download and upload and transfer to another system. So I could, for example, transfer this to Zenodo and their services. So Easy is an emulation service, which is also a very, very cool service. So for example, if you have old data files and an Excel spreadsheet from 1991, there's no chance to open it with any software. Easy is the project that creates environments where you can read all data files which are not supported anymore. And we can send them a data file there and they check whether they have already the emulation for it. It's a really very cool project. Then keyword enhancements, we are using ontologies for that, SciGraph as software, and putting together additional keywords to the ones who are existing automatically. And fair share is a fair testing, what I would like to show. So what it does is it uses the fair sharing software to look at indicators. And in Fixity we say, okay, we would like to show, for example, is there a unique identifier? Is the identifier persistent? Does the resource have structured metadata? And so also whether, is it machine findable? So metadata terms that are resolvable, for example, to namespace. Or, data identifier explicitly in metadata. So these are different. This came out of a working group from the Research Data Alliance. And I will just, select them all. I want all tests. And so that is a recommendation to, for example, also, is there metadata uses fair vocabularies? These are all descriptions which has been defined by this working group from RDA. And then I can give in my email address just in case it takes longer, because the service is not behind Fixity itself, but it's an external service. Then I say evaluate. So it's now connecting to the server. So for a moment only, I know it was a little bit fast. So how much do you know about fair data? Are there questions while this is running about how to test fair data. Should I explain fair maybe a little bit more about this concept of findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable? And if you're talking, you are muted. Okay, let me go back so it's still running. And so what the concept is here is really to say, okay, these are tests of fairness indicators. And it, for example, shows me, so I selected this talk or presentation I gave at Gateways, or the tutorial we had at Gateways and submitted to OSF. So it does different tests, and you see some are successful, have the green little sign for it, and some were not successful. The goal is here just to show users if they really want to have their data, the high fairness level, to give them a hint what could they work on. So for example, it looks like that the metadata graphical user interface does not work with any known permanent URL system. So it's an internal system. It has a unique identifier, but since we didn't give, for example, the presentation a DOI, it uses the internal of OSF, so that is not a known permanent URL system. It has structured metadata and grounded metadata, that is cool. So it shows also more what it really means in the message. So this, for example, it shows then which test was not successful. So the test was unable to locate the data and identify in the metadata using in any common property reserved for this purpose. So there seems not to be a metadata structure that is known. And so you can see it, we don't have to go into every test here, but this is the idea, to show users if they expect from a system or from a data set that it should have a high fairness level. How can we, describe that? And this is an approach to say, yeah, we can give you hints what makes it more fair, the data or the system you are working with. And I stop here with the screen sharing. So my question for brainstorming would be, because fairness is this really big, concept now for I would say 3 years. And this is our approach in the project to say, oh, we can give support to show how to make data systems more fair. So would this be something if the Science Gateways Institute, for example, would have that in the catalog as a service that you can, let's say, point to your Science Gateway? Would that be a service that is helpful? How should the service maybe look like? Yeah, is that a topic that would be interesting from a user perspective or provider perspective?
So are you looking to use this to transfer data between two different gateways?
So this is what Fixity does. Therefore, I wanted to show where we are using it in Fixity as a project, but I would like to do the same for the Science Gateways catalog, and then the data wouldn't be transferred. But for example, a provider could say, oh, I can use the tool in the catalog and with my own gateway together and maybe data in the gateway to show how high is my fairness level at this point. And a researcher could do something similar. That would be one of the ideas. This would be for transfer, upload, or download. You can really, in Fixity, you could use it as a service. And In the gateway catalog, I would envision it really more as a service that you give, for example, oh, this is the URL address of my service with this data, the details, but yeah, I hope I explained it a little bit better now. Yeah. Would that be something that is interesting to know how the fairness level is of your software, of data you store or you have in your gateway?
Yeah, it would be good. It's just that I don't know how usable it is, because the end user is looking to, the whole purpose for software is to get something done. You know, our software is just a via. They're not going to publish a paper, well, unless they're publishing on Agave or iPlant or whatever the gateway they're using. The bottom line is they want to have a product.
Yes, and it's not only about I chose a publication here, but it's about research objects.
Right, and that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how usable is it? So from my perspective, if a researcher is in Agave and they go, oh well, Agave doesn't really have this functionality, I want to use this other system, they're going to want to transfer that. But they may want to do bi-directional transfer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it would come in.
I mean, that would be where Prescuity would come in, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Or, you could automatically transfer it,
Yeah.
or help them to transfer it in other systems, yeah. So,
Sean, what is your take on this?
you're muted.
I think the features for the Prescuity are useful for some of the developers in evaluating these things, especially for where we have some of the projects where stakeholders are interested in some of the data products that are coming out of some of the projects that have gateways in front of them, and where data curation and stuff is important. So I think being able to know how well we've covered some of that stuff is pretty helpful. So having a set number of metrics, because the fair is just a set of guidelines pretty much right now. So if you want to benchmark implementation, I guess, then having a suite of tools to do that would definitely help for developers wanting, being able to adopt some of these things. So being able to integrate with a, existing API that they can use some of these tools to check. And it also looks like you have data integrity tools in here as well. Like you talked about, like checksumming for transfers, but also it looked like there was some bit operations or something to check the data.
Yes. So we do the Fixity check that it's really, that it's still the data you expect from the specific user to the other user, that it's still the same data and nothing, inserted or deleted, or they do things like that. Absolutely. So, but let's say my take was a little bit more to isolate it, maybe even from the Prescuity project, but really also offering it as a Science Gateway service, Science Gateway Institute service. So I have to be clearer with my questions. So would be that something people or you would be interested, for example? So Dan, what is your take on the whole idea of these testing and increasing with metadata?
I like the idea of having a tool to test it from a perspective of mostly from, I think what NIH would be interested in and things like that. Now practically speaking, who does it, and how does it slow down research? I'm not sure, but I think that my first sense is that NIH would be very interested in it. I don't know if there's anybody from NIH on.
So yeah, I think we still are in a niche there. So another product we are looking at the moment is Fair Shake, that has been created by a US project also to maybe integrate it directly also with Fixity. It won't slow down the research. So the idea was not to put it directly in the workflow when, for example, someone starts a simulation. That is not, so we don't want, well, if data is, transferred to the HPC system and the results come back, because what we want to do, we wouldn't be in that process. We want to be in the process when somebody says, oh, these are the results we want to save, and these are the results we want to share. And this is, so we are not going between, let's say, the simulations. What we do is, so when the user then thinks about, okay, I want to share this data via my gateway, via the tools I have with the community, and I want to do it in the fair way. And I want to do it, with best practices and follow the concepts of open science. So that was the idea, to say, oh, when this process is done, and not the whole, let's say, whole research workflow, but part of the steps where people are like, oh, I want to keep, or I have created a software which is part of my science gateway, and I want that the software is really also fair, that it's findable, all these aspects, and I would like to check whether that is really the point. So it shouldn't slow down. It should, it adds an extra step in the way you share data. So that is probably the right way to say it.
Mm-hmm. I think once you're in a gateway, I mean, as a community effort, I think it's worthwhile that the users would want to, the researchers who want to share data would want to run that check.
Okay. So that it's like, yeah. So an additional feature. So that users, for example, they get back, oh yeah, you have a unique identifier, but for example, you don't have a DOI. A unique identifier, like, an identifier in a system, because most systems have, at least for their research objects, a unique identifier, otherwise you don't find them in your databases anymore. So, but DOI would be already then the next step, saying, oh yeah, that's fantastic. This is already an identifier that is unique worldwide and not only unique for the system. So that gives an extra point, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So this would be, so let's say, what must the tool do that you would like to integrate it into your gateway, into your tools? At the moment, as I said, it's like a RESTful API, so you can call it via an API. Would be there a better way to provide it, that you can, for example, a standalone tool like this demo user interface, that we make a full-fledged interface and you can just give the URL for checking of let's say, data.
So are you saying that you would provide a suggested RESTful API that we would write to?
Yes, so it has already a RESTful API. Let me show you that. So we have a nice documentation for it. And I can share that also with you. Let Let me share my screen again. So this is, so everything is already as RESTful API. So we did it from the beginning that you can, wait, where is our target integration? So you see target endpoints, which different targets we can already work with. Then we have our own API endpoints, and each of it is like for uploading, transferring, downloading, and really also accessing the services, the enhancement of keywords, the easy service, and the fair testing service. So we have all these examples how to use it. So my question would be more, is it enough to offer this API, or should we have a full-fledged user interface where people can first go to and try the service, or what would be your recommendation?
I don't think we have enough data. We don't have a large enough sample size to collect realistic data as to what's needed and wanted. You know, just the three of us giving our opinions, it really isn't enough people.
I know.
I have an opinion, but you know, because for example, we don't have a large team, so for us to integrate into something like this, it would be a project, and we'd have to go, okay, well, is there a demand for that integration? And if there is, then okay, we'll integrate it. And that's the problem you're going to run into with each of the gateways, is how, you know, having them integrate to a project.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Therefore, the idea was, if we extend the gateways catalog in a way that you can put in and say, oh, by the way, this is the instance I want to test, and you can put directly the URL in instead that you have to integrate. Because that would...
yeah, as far as the, you know, integrating with the project, with the RESTful API, that's pretty straightforward. It's just, you know, 6-month project for a person.
So the alternative is then to have them take advantage of a URL. They could go to the service, to the portal, do the test and get it back. And so that sounds like it's a good way for us to get some gateways to see whether it's worth building into. Yeah.
So that would have been the idea, to say, okay, if you're part, for example, of the gateways catalog, we can, if you want to, directly test everything that is in the gateways catalog. And if somebody wants to test additional data or a certain project in the gateway, then they can go to the user interface and put in exactly the URL or the project.
I'm not sure I understood that correctly. Are you saying that you would be writing the catalog yourself?
So we have the gateways catalog,
yeah.
And that is the idea, that it would be in the future one of the features of the gateways catalog, that you can find out, let's say, a fairness score for data in your science gateway.
Right.
You can use the gateways catalog for that.
Yeah, and I'm going to, not to be a Debbie Downer, that the problem with that is that the gateways are continuously changing.
Yes, of course.
You know, with releases, and you figure each gateway is doing a release every 3 to 6 months, and so it's, unless you're going to maintain your catalog or have someone to maintain it continuously, that's going to get out of sync.
So one of the ideas, at least how the current fairness tests work, is luckily that it doesn't go directly for the test on the API. So the test itself is a RESTful service and with API. But what we do would be, if you don't switch the URL where the service is behind, then we would just go to the URL what we can find out from the URL machine readable. So that means so what we have to integrate is something, like when user spaces are there, that the authentication is in sync, so that resources you can access, that really the user can start it for his or her resources. But as long as you don't switch the URL, it would still work. That is the test behind it, because it doesn't look in detail on the technology. It does look only on the high level. What kind of information can I get from the outside if you give me this URL?
So it's just a single document that is being pulled from the URL. So whatever the gateway response is, whatever that's web payload is fed back into to process with whatever the tools that it's going to apply to that.
Exactly. So
that seems like the least level of friction. So like if you were just to register your gateway in the catalog and say, now to test, here's one or several URLs to test, and then it can just run those like as often as it wants.
Exactly.
For those. That to me seems like the lowest friction level. And then like you said, if individual researchers want to evaluate whatever the data product URL that is being sent out to people and how fair it is, they just paste that URL in there. And if I assume it probably doesn't need to have any sort of auth if it's public.
So that is the other thing. For example, if a user has something in a private space hidden, since we don't have the authentication, it would directly show the test like, we don't get any information, sorry. We cannot make any test on this. The only thing what we were considering is like, even so that would be a little bit against their test. Hi, Steve.
Sorry I'm late.
I'm
late, but I couldn't help it.
So, welcome. So the test normally is, fairness test is it really findable from the point of view from another user or community. So if you hide it behind and the test can get nothing back, it's hard to do something. The only idea we had that a user can maybe first test which kind of tests are there and have maybe this connection. Oh, I move it from private to open if it looks really good. The typical thing, I want the score improved before I make it openly accessible. But maybe we don't have to think about that. I'm not totally sure. So Steve, we are discussing at the moment like fairness tests, like this findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, the concept of fair data, and using tools for that in the gateways catalog. Because we have developed in the Fixity project already tools to give hints how to improve fairness. And so the question was a little bit, what would be helpful? Is there an interest to have something like that in the gateway catalog? Maybe, maybe people are like, oh, I know I share everything. I will be fine. So that was, but yeah, to have
Is
some.
there like a fairness sticker that you can put on your web page or something?
So you could have some fairness indicator score, yeah.
The SGCI, so an SGCI badge with a grade.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Number of stars.
Yes, my science gateway has a 4-star SGCI fairness sticker. Like that. Yeah, so the discussion was around whether, because we have built the infrastructure in a different project with RESTful API already, and we are improving it at the moment. And also, but the idea would be you go to the gateway's catalog and you can put in the URL to your gateway, and then it gives you a result back.
So
And
it just
you can-
runs like a diagnostic on it.
Yes, it runs just through the information it gets back when it goes to the URL, and this could be to a single file or to the entry page of a science gateway. So this could be different scores, because you might have for a file a lot of metadata, but you might have not, for example, a DOI for your science gateway itself or for your tool.
So if you point an automated tester at a gateway, it's going to mostly have to do just website kind of checking, right? It's not going to know that it's a gateway and be able to do something gateway specific, is it?
No, it's really the tests are made for research objects, and this could be software or a publication or data in general. So at the moment, we can do different rubrics. So we were working on that the software test, for example, could look differently than the publication test, just to acknowledge that research objects look differently. That would be the next step we are looking at. At the moment, it just tests for every URL it gets the same thing.
You know, it would be interesting if you could come up with some way to test gateways specifically. I'm not sure how that would work.
So
I guess the steps that you could do, right, is you could define how to access your gateway through curl, right? And you could say, if you do these curl steps, you should be able to, submit this job, run it, and get some result back. And then you could do web checking along the way.
I like that. Or we could even also decide, is there a gateway? And I know, for example, that Sean's gateway and also Agave API, that there's a RESTful API. Can we test just, to say, oh, can I get information via RESTful API? What is the answer? But, what is the call? We could make it specific in that way. How interoperable is that if I have the information from the YKey gateway, and how do I get it then to Steve's gateway? You know what I mean? Like, how could they talk maybe to each other to make it interoperable? The information, and not that everything has to be interoperable, but maybe at least the information about what the other gateway does or the other service, or that you can exchange some of the data, like, because let's say you want information about data itself, or you want the information about what kind of tools you can run. It could be something totally different. But yeah, something really tailored to science gateways. That is a good one also. So, and before that we discussed that it would be nice to have a score coming out of, a tool. And I would like to see it in the gateways catalog as an entry point, but it doesn't have to be there. So.
No, but but having something just a little beyond, you know, you got Web 3, W3C compliance would be nice. It would be hard to build, but
Do you ever run into situations where you have files or projects on one gateway that you concurrently want to run on a different gateway for verification or for any other reason?
So I had that for a reason. So I used Galaxy and Taverna. And I switched between them because I had access to a couple of data sets only in the infrastructure where I had only Taverna available, but I had my other workflow of analyzing it in Galaxy. So I wanted to get the results from Taverna into Galaxy to run my normal workflow. So I had that, but I don't know how often it's, especially for me, it's like this, I was myself in workflow interoperability, so I might have just also created the workflow in Taverna again.
I think it'd be a really nice situation if we got if gateways developed to the point where they could all interoperate in some way, and we could cobble things together with them. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, that is one of the goals also we have in the TAFE Summit in the Science Gateway Institute. And so maybe it's a good step to give a hint that the Science Gateway can already say, oh, yes, I can communicate on this level with another gateway. Maybe that we could say, okay, to do that, just as a recommendation, not even, more as a suggestion. It's not like, you know, everyone has to do it, but as a suggestion for interoperability, it would be great, you know, if you add this to your gateway, then it makes it more fair to work with other gateways. So Sean, you unmuted in between, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I was just left unmuted from the last time I was talking.
Oh no, that's okay. I only didn't want to miss when you had.
Now the trick is to get enough computing power so all our gateways are sentient and they can just.
Yeah, exactly. So we put them all together. And then we use Borg and Exceed at the same time.
I wonder if there is a science fiction story to be had about sentient gateways.
Yeah, maybe we need to have a science fiction session the next time to brainstorm some ideas, and then we step back and see what is doable in the next year.
Do you know that Nature publishes science fiction stories?
No, I haven't. I don't know.
They have a section called Futures, where they publish a science fiction story. It's got to be near-term science fiction, fairly hard science fiction. It's got to be like between 800 and 900 words.
Cool. Yeah, maybe we should aim for that. The next goal for Science Gateway.
I've submitted there. I haven't been accepted, but I've submitted there.
But yeah. So thanks everyone for the feedback. I wanted to brainstorm at first what your first impression is. And Eric, I totally get your point that you say, Sandra, we are not, you know, the biggest group to tell you should do that. but it's good to get the first feedback, like, you know, how people see it here, especially since you are all so much into Science Gateway. So we are almost at the top of the hour. So any further comments for me, what you would maybe like to see, or if we would set up something like this, if it's in the Gateways catalog, or whether it would be a standalone application where you can go and, you know, in the long run, maybe really improving the interoperability between gateways further. Any further comments? Anything you would like to add?
So we were talking a little bit at the top of the hour about archiving and what it would take to do that. But we really haven't gotten into that. Is that a situation that's prevalent in everybody's mind of archiving their projects for long-term storage?
So that
and I guess the other question is, because archiving the metadata is easy, but archiving the source files, that could get into a real mess.
yes, that is exactly yes. That is the hit point we have also with Fixity. So we connect to preservation systems like one is Zenodo, GitHub, GitLab, and so and one is CurateMD is based on Fedora 4 as a preservation system and has not a damn user interface. And that is exactly what we are looking at also at the moment. So we are trying to archive huge collections of videos, which is challenging. And also providing the metadata with it. So that is part of the project. But it's really, we have the librarians and the data curators here totally on board who are looking into that problem. And for example, the long archiving, they're moving data really to tape. They say, okay, we cannot do these huge collections on the normal, infrastructure, preservation infrastructure. We have to have still tapes.
Henry Neiman is the king of that.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, and even so storage started to be so cheap, it's just not, with the amount of data partially which is in research projects, you cannot put it on the normal.
Yeah, I mean, when you're starting to talk about petabytes of data, I'm like, okay, really? There's, how many CD-ROMs is that going to take? I'm dating myself, of course, but it's like, okay, what, 5,000, 10,000?
So, and that is also the other thing. So I work also with a group together, and they're like, Sandra, we have this fantastic data. At the moment, we are just shuffling it into Zenodo to secure it, which is already good. They can share it, they have it in Zenodo. But it's so tough for them then also to start a simulation. So therefore we come in that with Fixity, you can say, okay, I can get it out of Zenodo in my gateway and then start simulation. It's not only just shuffled into Zenodo and there it lays around. Yeah. So archival is a big step there. Absolute. So yeah, if you are interested, we can.
I have tons of interest, but no time to act on it.
Yeah, but yeah, thanks for the comments.
Yeah.
So yeah, since we are a small group, Sean, Dan, Steve, another topic you would like to add, or last comment or something?
No, not really. I think this one was an interesting one, and I work with the folks at on the Hive platform, and might be something very interesting.
Yeah, just reach out to me. And as I said, we want to make it reusable for science gateways, and I like the ideas which I got from you all, and also the SGCI badge.
Yeah, SGCI badge.
Yeah, for me, this would be a really handy, interesting project because I pitched JSON, link data in schema.org, and fair data in our in the gateway stuff that we would build for the next large EPSCoR project in Hawaii.
Oh, cool.
So this would be a super handy tool.
Great. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, let's connect also when you have already started, because a couple of things I can provide also more information, but in Read the Docs, you can see how far we are already. At the moment, it's more suggestion, but we are happy, you know, to extend it or whatever.
Yeah. If you can send that Read the Docs link in the Slack.
Yes, I do that. Yeah, that is true. We will lose the Zoom in a moment. The typical thing. Yeah, I put the Read the Docs there, and you can have a look, and we are very open. We have every 2 weeks on Mondays a community call of the different partners, so I can also invite to that. So everyone can give feedback what kind of services they would like to use and how to use it. So, cool. That was very helpful, because at the moment of course we think that this is very useful, the typical thing, and we had some people who told us, yeah, oh yeah, fairness test sounds good, but sounds good and really using is often a wide difference.
Yeah, plus they don't have to pay for it.
Yes, that is true. Okay, cool. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining today, and we speak in a month again, latest. And I put the URLs in the Slack channel. Thanks.
That's all.
Bye.
Bye.